I think I would agree with
All right, guys, it's 4:30. I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting of the Rules and Regulations Committee to order. Thank you, David. Little tap. First up is approval of minutes. I know we all received that a few days ago and have read through it. Do we have any questions on the minutes?
I move we accept them, the minutes of the June 11th meeting.
Now, second.
All approved? Okay, so the reason we're here today is to discuss policy 1.07. You have an edited version in your packet today, and we've been looking through this and kind of communicating a little bit what the reasons for this are is because of, everybody knows the last meeting where we kind of summed up a lot of members' emails and made them just one comment instead of reading them each individually. So after looking at that, we decided as a board that we should go back and review this policy to see what needs to be changed, or if anything needs to be changed to allow for that, not let that happen, or what needs to be updated.
Can I?
Yes, go ahead.
So there were several changes that were made, several suggestions that were made, and so Doug put together these suggestions. We don't want to give anybody the impression that this is how it has to be or anything like that. This is just a good starting point for a discussion. If you like it, great. If you don't like it, we can change it more. We just didn't want to start from zero. This gives you a little bit of a head start.
Okay, thank you. In rules and regs, do we have to have a motion before discussion? On
No, it's
policy
only when
changes?
it's a motion.
Okay, just wanted to make
So,
sure.
yeah, this is free-form discussion right now.
Okay. Does anybody have any first comments?
No, I do have a comment. The exchange that we were going back and forth, is that going to be our focus that we were looking at on the open forum section?
Yes, there's quite a few changes. If we want to just start with the first change and walk through it, since we only have one policy tonight, we can go in that much detail.
Mm-hmm.
So the first change is to the first sentence on section 5, open forum. There are no changes that have been recommended or brought up at this point. Before section 5, just open forum. So the first change is to sentence 1. Any member who desires to speak during open forum shall sign up for open forum, indicating the topic they wish to discuss. Each member will be allowed to speak for a maximum of 3 minutes. Transferring all or a portion of one member's time to another member is prohibited. The biggest change in that to me is having to sign up and put down the topic that you wish to discuss. I think that helps the chair and the board know what those discussions are going to be. However, I would like your input on how you feel about that, because I don't know that I'm comfortable if I was a member coming in and putting down my topic ahead of time.
Why not?
I don't know. For some reason, it feels like maybe you would be, with our current perception and the way people say they're afraid sometimes to come speak at our board meetings, is putting a topic making it even scarier for a member to come speak?
No.
Just a thought.
I don't think so.
I don't think that would, it's an issue.
How many people are afraid to come speak? I mean, is it because they're afraid to speak in public just in general?
That could
Or
be part of it.
because they're afraid to speak before the board?
I think we have a faction of people that are afraid to speak before the board.
Like,
I remember I was.
Or just in general. I mean, you
Yeah.
have the cameras on, and for some people, it's intimidating. I think that the topic is, look, I'm not set on that, this is not a critical issue in my opinion. But I think if you did have the topics, let's say there was 2 hot button issues going on, the chair could say, hey, let's address topic A first, and then so I'm going to go down the list, and number 1, number 3, number 5 all have to do with topic A, and then let's move on to topic B. But it's not a critical, it's not a critical thing.
That is a great point.
I like it because of that, because the chair can then say, okay, we've got 15 people who want to speak. 10 of those are all the same topic. Can I have a show of hands? You know, are you willing to address all 10 of those as one?
Or if you have someone, maybe you have 15 that want to say something, and 14 have to do with one subject, and one has to do with a completely other one, the board chair could go, let's go with the first one first,
Yeah.
Right.
you know, because that way that person doesn't have to sit through all 14. We can take care of that person. Okay, thank you for your comments. And then, you know, because like more often than not, a person makes their comments and then leaves. And it would allow them to leave. I mean, I'm just,
Mhm. Good point.
Well, I'm comfortable with having the topic, to know what the topic is ahead of time. I'm
Okay.
comfortable with it.
or we could throw in the word topic and then in parentheses, optional.
I don't know.
I'm okay with it.
I mean, you're either gonna do it or you're not.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it should be.
All right.
Okay. Number 2, this is kind of the biggest change. I mean, we all know we're living through COVID and our virtual meetings have been new to us. Zoom's been new to some of the board members even, and the public trying to watch them. And it's been a rough ride of knowing what to do during this and how to do it correctly. So I think the biggest change to this is the second sentence on section 5. In the event of a virtual meeting where in-person attendance is not permitted, members may send their statement to the corporate secretary 24 hours in advance of the meeting to be verbally read in real time during the open forum section of the meeting. In the event that the statement is longer than 3 minutes, reading will cease at the 3-minute mark.
I think you can either say to be verbally read, or you take out the in real time. I don't know what that is.
I think,
You're already saying it's gonna be verbally read during the open forum section of the meeting. What does in real time then mean?
I actually suggested that, and the reason I put that in there was because to be verbally read during the open forum section, I guess for some reason I was thinking, what if it was recorded beforehand or we said we were gonna post it on the website later as a video being read. I felt like that just clarified that it will be read at that time in person. But, I mean, honestly,
Well,
David?
Is verbally read redundant?
Don't?
No, it's not.
It's not.
No.
yeah, because you can sit there
You could
and
read it. You could read it silently. I mean,
Yeah.
any normal person would believe that that means verbally, but you know how we are with words.
That's why I want to be very specific
Yeah.
on these words.
Hmm. I mean, you're right, read into the minutes is, you know, but you could interpret read as in, okay, everybody's gonna read it
Yeah.
Yes.
I got it.
as opposed to read into the minutes.
Just seems a little awkward.
It's fine the way it's worded.
It actually doesn't say into the minutes.
No, I mean, I was focusing on the word read, as in, there's two definitions for the word read. I'm sure there's more than that, but.
Is it assumed, or does it need to be written that it will be read into the minutes? I mean,
No, I
Assumed.
think that the verbally read makes complete sense.
Okay. Jerry, any comments?
I agree. Just verbally read makes sense to me here during the meeting, open forum meeting.
Any discussion on number 2? Okay.
So do you,
Does it-
this is just a thought, does it matter who reads the comments? You know, is it the board chair, is it the corporate secretary? Am I stepping in it?
No.
Okay.
That was gonna be my question, you
Yeah.
know,
Easy thing.
if you pick somebody who reads slowly at the 3-minute mark,
True.
it's done. If you pick somebody who reads quickly, I think Doug's right, we gotta specify somebody.
Who do you think it should be?
Tammy, corporate
Corporate
secretary.
Corporate secretary.
Yes, I agree.
She's thrilled.
Corporate secretary or assistant corporate secretary?
Is there any reason we would want to discuss letting the members pick which board member reads it? We did get an email about that.
I know, I saw it today. There was just one. No.
I like all fairness, it being one person, not,
I think that makes more sense coming from just one person.
so should we change it to members may send their statement to the corporate secretary 24 hours in advance? Where should we add that he will, whoever it is at the time, will read that?
Verbally read
By the corporate secretary in real time.
after the open forum section of the meeting by,
At the very end?
yeah.
Sure.
Okay. Number 3, repetitive statements or topics may be discouraged to save time. The only change there is crossing out shall that was suggested and just changing it to may. So repetitive statements or topics may be discouraged to save time. A show of hands may be called for by the chairperson as an indication of support by others present. Who wants to comment on that one first?
Well, I honestly think that that's a good statement, because there are a lot of repetitive issues sometimes. And that gives the members a chance to discuss it or make their choice. Is that how I'm reading it now? Okay.
Yeah, to me, that's how I would assume that this is meaning by saying may be discouraged and that may be called by the chairperson. That's just an optional thing that the chairperson can do to try and save time and move the meeting forward. But it does not mean those members can't still speak if they want to. If they want to raise their hand and relinquish their time and say, okay, I feel like I've been represented because we all raised our hand, that will be allowed, and they can forfeit their time. But if they still choose to speak, they still can.
Absolutely.
You're not trying to take that away from them.
Good.
And then the only next change is the new number 5, the addition of the word regular board meeting. Doug, I had a question. Does that regular need to be capitalized? Does that make it very clear that it will be the next open 6 p.m. regular meeting?
Yeah, I double checked that with the other policies that we have in place, and that's the way it's used, the lowercase regular, and that's what it means is the
Our meeting tonight.
Yeah, the fourth Thursday public meeting.
Okay.
All right, let me ask you a question. Did I cut you off? I'm sorry.
You're probably gonna ask the same question.
Okay.
I was gonna ask about the questions being held to the end of open forum and then they're responded to.
Yeah, I'm concerned that failing an immediate answer. Okay, so what we've been doing, and it seems to be working, is allowing people to make their comments. So 6 people come up, they make their comments, and at the end of those comments, either the chair or myself respond to ones that it's does not require further research, and we can answer very quickly. My only concern is if someone were to interpret the word immediate,
That will be right after they
that would be
speak.
immediately after they said something. Maybe failing an answer during the meeting,
During
or
open forum.
failing an answer following the open forum.
Following all members' comments?
There, I like that. And we copied that format from the city. That's what the city does. Everybody makes their comments, and then the mayor responds to ones that he is able to respond to.
Question. Does the city ever have an instance where the mayor responds and then the
the citizen comes back and wants to get into it
Yeah,
and further discuss?
I mean, it's a tough one in that, you know, you don't want to get into this back and forth dialogue. But sometimes you need further clarification or something like that, you know, so I think that's where the board steps in and goes, you know, we've answered this, you know, because what you don't want to do is you don't want to, they're given 3 minutes, and their second question is, what is that, another 3 minutes? You know, or if they have a further clarification. I mean, I think we got to be careful with this is an open forum where they get to make their comments. It's not a debate.
Yeah, I think it's good to note that it's definitely not a debate. It's going to happen. Someone's going to ask a question after we respond, and they're going to ask a question. But I think at that point is when we have to remind them, we would love to talk about that on email. If you will email it, let's further this discussion outside of the meeting. So that change was on number 5. Failing an answer following all members' comments, the answer shall be reported at the next regular board meeting.
Good.
Okay.
Can we just take a look at 6?
Yeah.
I mean, there's some of this stuff in here, 6 and 8. It's like we're grade school kids and have to be told to be polite. And I mean, is it normal, Doug, to have things like that in a bylaw or a rule?
Not typically. You should, like you said, you should be able to, you know, to govern yourself how you act. I mean, yeah, it's.
I mean, I'd like to see it say statements by members containing errors of fact will be corrected at the end of the open forum.
I'm going to play devil's advocate on this one. Given how some within our community are looking at each and every word at this time, I would be concerned. I agree with you completely. I mean, we have other policies that talk about how board members should interact with the community. That's already covered. With that being said, the sound bite that says that the Rules and Regs Committee is removing the word non-confrontational just doesn't look good.
Then leave it in there, but say something about not should be corrected, will be corrected in a non-confrontational manner at the end of open forum.
Well, I just remember that sometimes, okay, so sometimes either I or the board or the chair gets an email, and sometimes I may put several hours into researching the issue. Not often. I would be careful in saying that we're going to address it, because we may have a feeling that a comment is not accurate, but I may have to do research to substantiate it. Because remember, you know, a person can make a comment on Facebook and it can be completely unsubstantiated and nobody says in a word. But if I respond back and I have anything incorrect, that's a problem. So I take a lot of time, and you know, sometimes I have to check with, you know, our CFO, or I have to check with Doug, or I have to check, you know, sometimes it takes a long time. So just be careful not to set us up where we have to answer immediately or correct immediately, because we may not be able to.
So you're comfortable with leaving it the way it is?
Yeah, and I just, in the current environment that we have, I think removing the word non-confrontational may be viewed incorrectly, even though I agree with what you're saying because it's covered in other provision, other portions.
But you don't even want to commit to doing it that night.
No, because sometimes, you're like, I think they're incorrect on that one, but I'm gonna have to do some, I'm gonna have to make sure, because, sometimes people will come up and they'll look at they'll have a question about the financials, and our financials are that thick, and they'll pick one thing out. I can't know off the top of my head. Dwayne can't know off the top of his head. We may think they're incorrect, but we might have to do some research. So I would hate for someone to come back and say, well, you didn't correct me right away, so obviously I was correct.
That's what I was gonna say. If we took out the word should be and changed it to will be, and then something slips by and it's not corrected, then it's seen as
Yeah.
truth.
Well, that can also be said for the line underneath that on opinion statements too. If an opinion is stated and we know it's not true,
Yeah, what do we do?
we need, if it's not addressed, then it's perceived as true. Would would that answer, those things be answered at the next regular board meeting? Give you time for that, Tom?
Yeah, absolutely.
Then I think that should be added to it. If any answers are not factually true or not perceived as true, that they will be answered at the next board meeting.
I hear you. Statements of opinion should not be challenged by the directors, thereby avoiding open debate. The part about it being an opinion, and this is just my own example, and take a personal side to this. The very first time I, as a member, ever came to a board meeting, I specifically wrote my paragraph to say, in my opinion, because I was terrified of the board at that time, and that y'all were gonna just tear me up for all the things that I didn't know being a new person in the community. So I purposely said, in my opinion, so that I wouldn't get any response from you guys. And I know others that do that too, just because I was afraid of being wrong and then getting publicly shown that I was wrong, which I was a lot of the time. But I do like that if it's an opinion, I don't know that we can correct it. But if it's an opinion with stated things that are wrong, that we know are factually wrong, Tom and us should be able to correct them.
And that's all I'm asking for, because that's out there. We just need to, that's a cloud of opinions.
It is a lot of opinions, and a lot of them do contain non-factual information. Doug?
Yeah.
Would we be opening ourselves up to any issue by adding to that sentence?
You're talking about the statements of opinion should not
Yes.
be challenged? Yeah. No, I think you could add something there that would give some leeway, time, number one, to research, and then provide a reasonable response.
Not invalidating a member's opinion, but trying to give factual information back to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I would like to go with it.
Yeah, I think the opinions you're really concerned about are the ones that are obviously based on incorrect information. So, if there's a way to,
Not really.
I think it's trying to separate, okay, I was against the increase in the assessment. In my opinion, I'm against the increase in the assessments.
And that's good.
That's an opinion.
That's perfectly fine.
I'm against the increase in the assessments because of this wrong fact that I just stated.
Yeah.
Then it goes to, hey, whoa, time out. You have an incorrect fact. We're going to correct you. Now, if you still have the opinion, that's fine, but at least form your decision based upon facts, not based upon garbage.
So could we combine 6 and 7 and say statements and opinions by members containing errors of fact should be corrected in non-confrontational manner?
And it
Makes
can be
sense.
done real easily by doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And then you could put, yet statements of opinion should not be challenged by the directors. Because we do need an increase, we don't want that happening.
Well, in general, you're right, they shouldn't be challenged if it's just an opinion, but it's an opinion that is obviously based on falsehoods or not facts. If it's ignored, then it's perceived as true. And so
There's a fine line.
there's a fine line in there.
line there.
And I think it could be handled in such a clear-cut way, and I shared it with Tia a little bit, of how that could be handled. I mean, you can acknowledge that that is their opinion, but there are facts that refute that opinion, and then by the next board meeting, we could ever have that in writing, put out there or something like that to address them.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of the
That would
jury's
help.
point has to do with how it's responded to, which you can't really legislate in a policy.
Yeah. So actually, how do y'all feel about combining those statements?
5 or 6 and 7.
6 and 7 to read, statements and opinions by members containing errors of fact should be corrected in a non-confrontational manner. Yet, statements of opinion should not be challenged by the directors, thereby avoiding open debate. Just combining those two, or is there a reason to keep them separate?
I combine.
Is yet the right term? That sounds wrong.
I think it answers our question, our problem.
Okay.
Do we want to say statements of opinion will not be challenged by the director?
I think you have to use a softer word because a person could come up and state an incorrect fact, but then say, in my opinion, this incorrect fact. And
Yeah.
it's just, I think you got to leave some level of flexibility. Because also remember, depending upon the number of people that are speaking, I'm feverishly writing down comments and everything, and depending upon the number of speakers, it's not a lot of time. And you got to think about, and so you want to listen, but you also want to formulate some sort of response. And so, on some of them, it's just having flexibility of, and we're not going to address that right now because we'll have time and we can always address it at a later time. Having that flexibility, I think, is important.
Because sometimes there are 8 different topics in 1 3-minute, and even I've tried to keep up with taking the notes
Yeah.
and trying to write the
I'll have
questions down, and
I'll have
I've
a
missed
full
it.
page of things that I want to try and cover, but also respond to them in a respectful manner. And what are we going to pick? What are we not going to pick? And what's redundant? Not easy to do on the fly sometimes.
If there was a situation, and the way this policy, taking these possible changes into account, if a member came up and spoke for 3 minutes, and it was back and forth on multiple different topics, is there any reason why a board member or any of us couldn't ask, is there one main question you have for us, or help clarify what it is you want answered? Are we allowed to do that, or is that taking more time for them to answer again?
You are correct. There are times that people will come up and they won't have pulled their thoughts together, and your head is spinning because you're trying to keep up. But I think it's important to allow property owners to voice their thoughts, whether they're organized
Yeah.
and whether they're disorganized, whether they're experienced at speaking in front of people, or whether they're inexperienced at speaking. And I would hate so on your first time, for me to me or the chair to cut in, 20 seconds into your, hey, can you just slow down a little bit? Can you pick one? You might get off track, and maybe
Yeah.
I know some people rehearse what they don't, because they want to come out, and if you get them off track, then they might. It's their time. It's their 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Let them give their 3 minutes. If they're all over the map and we're not tracking with what they're saying, that's unfortunately on them. But I'd hate to get them off track or appear rude or cutting in or you're wasting part of my 3 minutes, or,
Yeah,
let them speak.
sure, very good point.
Going back to item 2, then it just occurred to me, do we want to continue with the 3-minute limit or
Yes, I do think so.
not extend it to 4? Or,
Given that we've had situations where we have as many as 20 people making comments, that's extreme. Doesn't happen often, but it does happen. In my personal opinion, if a person takes the time to collect their thoughts ahead of time and write some notes, they can cover a fairly complex issue in 3 minutes.
oh, yeah.
But if you give them 5, they're going to use all 5.
Yeah.
I think that there's very few issues that we have that you couldn't deal with in a 3-minute time frame. And on those rare occasions where you get 20 people here, 20 times 3, that's an hour.
Yeah.
That's a
I'm
lot
just
of
throwing it out
time.
there.
Yeah.
I remember when, as a candidate for the board, we did those, Tim Jaycox did those videos of us over at Lake Point, and that was 5 minutes, right?
I think
Yeah.
so.
It was hard to fill 5 minutes. And you're talking about your life's history.
Yeah, I think mine was too.
So, yeah, I don't disagree with the 3. I was just,
Yeah, I'd be very leery on that. Especially what does tend to happen is when we have a hot button issue, you do tend to get 3 or 4 or 10 along the same lines. And, the asking for the show of hands is kind of the thing in the last resort if it gets really bad and it's really taking a long time. I think that, if you have 10 people here, and even if all 10 talk about the same subject, you let them go.
if we do the show of hands, do we not want to say somewhere in here that we would then also read the names of the 9 people who didn't get to speak, who decided that it was okay for them not to speak? Do we want to do that?
I think that in the 4 years I've been here, I've only seen us do it once, maybe twice. And I think what happened was in the minutes, so the chair asked for a show of hands and there were 10 hands that were raised. And they documented in the minutes that 10 hands were raised.
But not the name.
But not the names. Maybe you want to do that.
You wouldn't even know if they were pro or against whatever the topic is, though, by a show of hands.
No.
You ask for both.
Yeah.
You
But
can ask for
know
both.
which member is which if you're showing hands, though.
Well, you'd
No,
almost have
the
to
way it was
hear-
done was, I think it was, if memory serves me correctly, I think it was when we were first talking about increasing the private cart fees, and we had quite a number here, and I think that's when it was asked, how many people support that there should not be an increase in private cart fees? And then people raised their hand. So it was a very specific question, and we documented it. If anybody looks at the history and I got it wrong, I apologize, but I think that's when it happened.
Oh, yeah, I completely get that. I was saying if we wanted to list the names, we would have to stop at that point and go, what's your name, what's your name, what's your name?
Yeah, and that's gonna, so you might end up losing what you're gaining.
Yeah. I think though that somehow we ought to put those in the names of the people who opted, because somebody's gotta speak. At least one, maybe 2 people have to speak, pro, con.
Oh, yeah, whoever speaks, their name would still be in there.
There, yeah, but I think the other names, although you wouldn't know if they were pro or con.
Right.
Never mind. The other thing is, we don't want to attach a total time limit to open forum.
That's been brought up. I'll reserve my comments, Jerry. Do you have any?
Say an hour or 30 minutes.
I think it depends on the topic. Some topics, they're important. They're important to all our members. So I'm not against doing it at a specific time, but I would be at the discretion of the board on that. Because of the people that are involved. We could be here, like you say, hours, and yet hearing the same argument or the same praise over and over again.
I think though we've got to put it out there up front, because if it's at the discretion of the board and we invoke it at the meeting in June, because it's all con, and then in July, we don't invoke it because it's all positive stuff, then we're dead.
Well, I think there needs to be a degree of reasonableness on the time extension and on important topics. And when I say reasonableness, if it's not a hot button, it's just I don't know how to really put it into words to say, but if it's something that's not perceived as that important. And I'm looking, that's not the word I'm using, I just don't know how to put the words that I'm looking for to express that maybe there could be a floating time. If not, it's simpler just to have one set, just let everybody do their thing.
So let me jump in. If you go back 2 or 3 years, on average, member comments last 20 minutes. On average-ish. Maybe once a year, we'll hit an hour. Maybe. And I think over the last 4 years, one time we hit an hour and a half. So the reality is they really don't take that long. And given the recent apology by the board, I think that putting a 30-minute or any limit on it would be perceived.
Retribution.
Yeah, well, or just, hey, you apologize here, but then you're limiting us to an hour.
Yeah.
Now, the reality is we rarely hit, maybe once a year we hit an hour, but it may not be perceived well. The reality is most of the time it's about 20 minutes.
Well, if somebody wants to speak, I have no problem. Let's take our time, let's get through with it.
Yeah.
But if it is, you do have a provision in here. If it gets repetitive, then the board chair can step in. I don't think the board chair should step in after the second or third
No.
repetitive. When you start getting into 10 or 12, okay, we're hearing the exact same thing. Okay, let's.
Except we're gonna have it on the sign-up sheet now.
Yeah.
Beforehand.
Yeah. I just think
Yeah,
any
that would
limits.
that would solve a little issues, the
Yeah.
topic and whatnot, we'd have an idea
Yeah.
of time limit by the amount of people that signed up. So, I'm good with that. I think everybody should have the right, their board members.
Yeah, and we talk about how at times we're disappointed in the number of people that show up, because the numbers are typically so low, although the online numbers are really getting pretty impressive. But, we talk about the low attendance, and then we're gonna set it at 30 minutes, that's kind of,
Get to the meeting first and sign up.
come here to the meeting, we want you,
Yeah.
but don't say a word.
Yeah. And that's kind of where I am. You guys will hear me say this probably for the next year. I'm not a fan of putting something into policy that's not a problem yet. If it's not broken, don't fix it. And as of right now, I still encourage members to come and still encourage them to talk. And if they get here and they want to do that, I don't think we should cut them off until down the line if it ever becomes an issue.
We
And
do
then
3 minutes.
Yeah. True. And then the second part to that is, if we did have 50 people show up and talk about the same topic, I think that's our cue to start listening a little harder.
Yeah. So that takes us to 10.
I feel like maybe we disagreed on that. I want to make sure I'm not the only
No,
one like
there's no
ending the
disagreement.
comments.
No,
Are we okay with moving forward with no time
I'm
limit?
just throwing stuff out there.
Okay. I like it because it gets us
I
thinking.
had a lot of time to think between scoring today.
So number 8, you also brought up, Mary, members should be thanked for their interest and contribution. It does sound ridiculous that we have to say that and that it's written in a policy. I think if we took it out, like Tom was
It's not-
saying, it
it's-
would be
yeah, it's
perceived
not gonna hurt-
wrong.
It's not gonna hurt to leave it in there.
Yeah.
Personally, I took offense at it.
Number 9, the issues and concerns raised by members shall be noted in the minutes of the meeting. That is not, there's no changes to that. And then 10, there is, I can't tell what blue is.
Can I back you up a little bit?
Yeah. go ahead.
Okay, so sometimes, I'm talking about number 9. What if we said a summary of the issues and concerns? And here's why I include that word, is because some people will come to us and say, I want to make sure everything I said word for word is in here. Like they're giving a deposition. As long as we hit the key points, you know, this person was upset about blah, blah. I don't know, you know, I think it's, some people get the perception that, you know, that they said this
It's
thing.
gonna be fixed.
It's gonna be word for
Exactly.
word, and that's not what minutes are. Minutes are not word for word. Minutes are what occurred in the meeting, a summary of what occurred. Now, motion is word for word, so I'm contradicting myself, but I think
So,
it's,
I mean, it's easy, we just add a summary of the issues and concerns.
Yeah. Strike the insert a summary of.
If they want the word for word, there's the video.
That's why I have no problem with
And
that.
it's there.
yeah.
No.
I cannot see an issue. That's how we're already doing it. We're just clarifying that's what we're already doing. All right. Doug, please remind me what blue means. Is this a complete addition or is this existing from prior?
It's a new addition.
New addition?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Red is the first go around, blue is the second go around.
Blue is the second go around. Okay.
Is that correct? Yeah. Or is
No,
I
they're
think that's
people.
red is one person and blue is another person?
Yeah, red was Tia and blue was me.
Oh,
Oh,
red
got
is
it.
me, blue is you. Okay, so number 10 states, members are encouraged to submit questions to the board via email. The board will provide a response to emailed questions and depending on the content, may elect to share such questions and answers at any meeting of the board. Again, I'm gonna let y'all go first.
This goes back to the number of people who are hesitant to appear before a microphone and speak before a group. If you watch them, they're shaking, you know, and they don't need to be that way, but they're scared. If we have their comments by email, we've got them. We can look at them. I know we all read them. We can look back, refer to them, and if you get 10 people through the forum, you can take as many notes as you want, but while you're taking notes,
You're not listening.
you're not listening. I learned that in college, and, you know, it cost me. But, you know, I needed to have it recorded, but I didn't. We didn't have those things in those days. That was so long ago. But this is, you know, the emails to the board is a way for people to say as much as they want to say. And they will be read.
Yeah, I like this a lot. My following question is, because in recent months, because of the way we're doing meetings, we have asked them to submit comments to Tammy that will be read at the meetings. And we are still getting, even though now, in essence, the meetings are open to the membership, but we are still getting statements and questions emailed to us, and they want them read at the meeting. Is that something that we're gonna continue to do?
Yeah, like David has, I think it's 4 for tonight's meeting to read. Although we may, I guess we might have, maybe read them based upon this conversation.
Policy, yeah.
No, policy.
We gotta have a quick answer.
You're correct, you're correct.
And one of them specifies who they want it to be read by. I don't see us.
Yeah, I don't, I think that's, I think that, you know, when they say, you know, please read, you know, sometimes they ask questions and we answer them, and or often people will send a question to the board or to management, and we address the question, we answer it, but that, I don't think we need to do anything more than that. You know, some of the questions get a little bit challenging, especially with some of the language, you know, and so forth. But you'll see that, you know, David responds to them. You know, we listen to you. We maybe don't agree, but I've read and listened to you. And I think that if they took the time to send it in, they should get some sort of response, even if it's short.
See, that reminds me of a thought I had. You responded to an email that to me was very disrespectful. I would not have responded. I think we ought to hold that out, that, you know, because it says no personal attack, well, no personal attacks will be permitted. But if an email is disrespectful to either a member of the board or the board as a whole, I would never answer.
And that is a decision of the board.
That doesn't need to be codified.
I personally I try and respond to every single email I receive. If they become repetitious or abusive in the extreme, at that time no, you've crossed the line.
Yeah.
But that's 1%.
Oh,
Less
yeah,
than that.
it's very few.
It's very few. I try and respond to every single one, and I think the
Well,
board.
I think we should, but I mean, I think that 1% needs to be held out there, that.
I don't have a problem with
If you
that.
cross that line, you're not getting an answer.
And that's in my opinion, what that is, that's a style. You know, that's a, you know, I may lean one way, you lean another. And both are right.
Mary, that was my issue with this sentence was, will provide a response to emailed questions. It kind of stopped me there because I went back to one that I got that was a personal attack. I did not respond to that.
Yeah.
And I don't want to feel like I have
I don't
to.
know if we need, Doug, you think we need to put wording in there that,
Real quick, I don't mean to pick up, but I want to finish this before you answer that. This entire sentence is under the open forum section, and I don't feel it's relevant to open forum. This is discussing emails that may or may not be responded to, may or not be read at any meeting. This open forum is specifically talking about members and the process of how to do that. So I do like this sentence, and I think that Doug should input on how to make it better, but I don't know that it belongs in this section. It might be earlier in the document, but
I
it's
think
not
that-
an open forum.
I think
issue.
I'm going to give you two answers. I think you're right, but I do think it should stay in here because it's what David was saying about people being intimidated by the cameras and not feeling comfortable in front of the board. I think we want to encourage them, and they may not read. We read, you know, all of the, but a lot of people, they go in and they read, boom, just that section. And I think it helps to let them know that that is a viable option. Even though you are correct that this is talking about emails and we're talking about open forum. You're right. I just know from how property owners act, they typically don't read all of the.
could we not put the same thing in another
Yeah, absolutely.
section? I personally think it belongs in here
Okay.
because it offers an option to the open forum.
Does this make it not as, the situation we're trying to solve for is to give guidance in the difference of virtual meetings and how it will be handled, in-person meetings, how it will be handled. This kind of muddies the waters to me and says, we may or may not
May or may not what?
read your email at a meeting.
No, this is saying you have an option to send us an email.
You could separate it into another section, section 6, that kind of sets it apart from open forum. Maybe you call it as an option, just throwing this out at the top of my head, as an option to attending in person. We encourage questions be submitted to the board. Depending on the content, the board may answer, something along those
Like
lines.
alternative ways to address the board.
Yeah,
or-
maybe that's what you call the section 6, alternative ways to, yeah, exactly.
Because I'd much rather than send me an email on, let's say it's on the 1st, and we respond on the 1st or the 2nd, than hold that email all the way to the end of the month and then respond. I mean,
It would be great in the situation of where, yeah, like you're saying, if we get one email and it's been answered and we get 5 more throughout the month, then we could choose to say, hey, we have gotten a lot of member comments this month. This is what the answer was. Because I
Yeah.
wish members would do that more, honestly. Ask questions to us and get the answers and then share it.
yeah, no, I agree.
That's why the paper has letters to the editor. When,
Yeah. Mary, are you comfortable moving it to a section 6?
sure.
Yeah, me too.
Jerry? Should we change that word "will provide"?
Yeah, I'll fix that. I think you got a valid point there about, the content of the email. So I'll wordsmith that a little bit.
Okay.
Get it to you guys.
Any other, that got us to the end of it. Any other questions about the overall, what we're trying to do here? Do we feel like that accomplishes giving correct guidelines for the situation we just went through and for future things we can think of?
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm glad to see that we've left guidelines for this kind of virtual meetings in there, because it's gonna happen again.
Number 2, the statement to the corporate secretary 24 hours in advance. I wrote that, but I didn't know if that was appropriate, if it needed to be a different time, 48 hours, 6 hours. What's fair for when agendas are made?
We have some still coming in this afternoon.
That's what got me thinking about it, because we got one about an hour ago.
It'd be nice to get them 24 hours in advance, because it would allow us, if it was a complicated issue that we had to research, it would give us time. We've received comments previously that were, an hour before the board meeting, and it was lengthy, and we're getting ready for the board meeting, and we're not gonna be able to answer these questions because we don't have the time.
Yeah.
12 hours, 24 hours, I think that as long as it's, by noon, I don't
I'm
think.
perfectly comfortable with 24, I just want to make sure we
Leave
specifically.
24 in there, just recognize that we strive to include everything as long as it's reasonable.
Okay, any other comments? Doug, you got your mission?
Yep, I've got it written down. So does this way work for you, Tia, to make the changes and then send it out to all y'all, and then
Mhm.
you? I
It
like
does for me.
Yeah, okay. Perfect.
Because I feel like that was a good discussion. We each had things that added to this. So what are the next steps?
So I'll put together the comments that you guys have made and try to fashion them in a manner, in a manner that makes sense with the policy, and then I'll send it out to the Rules and Regs Committee, and you can, potentially come to an agreement by email, and then we can present this at the next GM meeting to the board, if you guys can come to an agreement.
Okay, so to move it forward to the board, it does not take another meeting. We can all agree and then go ahead and move this forward.
Yeah.
I mean, the changes you're asking for are pretty straightforward. If they were complicated changes, that might be one thing where Doug might come back and say, let's represent the next board meeting. But these were pretty straightforward changes. and you're gonna be able to tell us via email, no, that's not what we said, Doug, we said this, not that, you'd be able to correct it.
Member comments, once this is published in the updates that we just did, member comments by email, if we have more changes to it from member comments that add to it, would that require another meeting to come together?
Not
Or can we
necessarily.
still?
You guys can get an email consensus. Just, so recognize that the more complex the issue, the harder it is to get consensus via email.
Yeah, okay.
So if it's a little thing, hey, this word should be may instead of will, that's an easy one. But when you start getting really complicated, I recommend you hold it to the next meeting because it's going to get really hard.
Mhm.
The discussions via email are really challenging.
Okay. I just want to make sure members still have a chance to give some input on what the changes are and how they see them. So. Okay. Next is open forum. Do we have anybody outside today?
We did not get signed up for the meeting.
Okay.
We have people now, I can go check.
Yeah, then why don't you just check just to
Yep.
make sure we're to close the meeting and
It's on there. In my humble opinion.
I know, it's a tough one.
No, it isn't.
There are no comments.
Thank you, Tammy.
We just need a consensus of the
No
board.
member comments in person. Tammy received one last week that I just wanted to kind of bring up as part of the new business section. This person is not a member, but they're a renter in our community and brought up a good point that I just wanted to clarify while we're here. The statement was that questioning why renters don't have rights to our amenities and could the rules and regs look into that. If that's something this committee ever wants to look into, let's do it. But as of right now, I don't know that there's anything we can change or challenge about that.
That'd be giving 2 votes to a single piece of property.
Well, it wouldn't change voting.
We had talked about this at one point of the possibility of
Oh, the owner
a
transferring
property
their
with
rights.
being able to assign their amenity usage rights, not their voting rights, but their amenity usage rights. So a renter could potentially would be able to get an activity card. So it's something that had been discussed previously. It didn't go anywhere, meaning the board wasn't interested in discussing it at that time, Tammy. Please.
Can I help you?
So, at the time, Doug and I had done quite a bit of research on it, and there could be a mechanism, but the board wasn't interested at that time. If the board would like to revisit, or if this committee would like to revisit the issue, we could update the research that we did previously. If you don't want to, that's fine.
Let's think about it. I don't know that we need to discuss it right now, but I say we think. But I do think.
On the heels of the discussion about 3.04, probably be best to not to talk about this, right?
Yeah, yeah.
It would, because it could be
Agreed.
viewed as kind of similar.
Agreed. But I do want it stated that I think a lot of the times renters do not know that they have the ability to get guest cards through their landlord. And if you have a neighbor that wants you to go with them to an amenity, your neighbor could help you get a guest card if your kids want to go to the pool together and things like that. I just think that needs to be restated, that guest cards are still available. Landlords can help you if you reach out to them. Anybody else have any new business? Jerry?
No.
Okay. Do we want to set a meeting date or leave that for open right now, since we don't have any topics on the table right now?
You had mentioned at one point, each of us taking sections
Sections.
that may or may, probably may not have been recently and just taken a look at it.
I think we
Items that
really
have been
should.
reviewed recently?
No, the ones that haven't.
No, have
Yeah.
not.
All of the things that have gone forth because of the 2020 plan, I don't think we need to revisit those right away.
Yeah, not taking away everything you've done, Doug, and all your team for reviewing all of these policies,
No,
but.
they should be living documents that we review on a regular basis.
Maybe the next meeting, we just develop a schedule for that.
Mhm. Do you mind if I take a crack at the schedule and
Sure.
see?
Go ahead.
Okay. And if y'all have any section you have a big interest in and you want to read it, let me know. I'm pretty sure I can help assign that one. Okay. Anything else? Motion to adjourn?
Make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
Adjourned.